show me money. Yeah, and I don't see that money for like 6 months. Correct. That's cool.
Did you ever get it back?
I did get it back, but no interest, of course. It took like 6 months. I think I filed in January, got the IOU in February, got the money in like July, August, something like that. Ridiculous. I'm so glad about New York.
Yeah, that's like the New York is kind of like the microcosm of this. So I paid taxes this year for last year, and I did not know that when because I was like, I guess I owed like $30 for the previous couple of years, that it was an underpay. So I paid that with the card that I use, right? Well, come to find out, they didn't take the $30, but they took the whole taxes out of that. And I had already gave them a check. I had sent them out a check for the $3,000 that I owed them. And so,
dispute the charge.
Huh? That's what I'm doing.
I mean, dispute the charge with your credit card company.
No, they had to go. It wasn't the credit card. It was I used my debit card.
Hey, you still dispute it with the bank though.
But I'm telling you, Will, I went to the bank. They told me I had to go to IRS. Yeah. So that's what I did. And I called them. I said, well, what do I have to do? They're like, well, just send us the 2 bank statements. Your official check receipt, and then the bank statement, and then just send it to us. Do I send it to a particular person, or is it no? Just send it to us. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Hopefully with a letter.
I did.
Okay, good. Because it's just
yeah, I didn't. No. I didn't just send them a bank statement. I sent them a description. That would be dumb to do. Yeah.
I like it. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah. And then and so we just got a letter back.
Oh, you did get a letter back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
saying we'll look into that.
Okay.
I mean,
appreciate that.
What was going on the rest of the?
Well, just kind of if you don't get it back, just count it as a prepayment to your 2024 taxes.
I wish. See, it's like that. It's like the IRS is kind of like the casino; it never loses.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, anyway, but that's but once I do that, see, I can get another MacBook.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Get some much more powerfulness.
Something like that.
How old is that?
Man, well, I bought it
used.
Used 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's got to be a 6-year-old.
So that's MacBook. About 7, maybe 7. It's actually held up pretty well.
I'm surprised it still runs.
But Macs hold up pretty well.
They do, but that screen size has got what? Is that a 10-inch?
But see, if you could see his computers though, like you love the big screens.
I do like the big screens.
So for me, I don't really care.
My problem is I'm getting old, and I have to have the font, even though it's like 12. It's like it looks like 24 on my screen.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the big screens.
I like the big screens too in my living room when I'm watching the game.
Oh yeah. You want to see the blades of grass?
Oh, yikes!
Yes.
Look at that, man! I can see like the sweat coming off.
So what was it? Was it a domination by San Francisco, or are the Jets bad?
I think that the 49ers could have been better. They could have played better.
They scored on 8 straight drives, but
it's the score should have been higher. And most of the score came from the field goals. You know what I'm saying? They did. I mean, they scored like what two touchdowns out of the whole game?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the rest were all field goals. So the Jets defense was really good.
They allowed 8 straight scores.
Well, yes.
You know how many times it happened last year?
8 straight scores on field goals.
Yes, but how many teams last year gave up 8 straight drives for points?
A lot.
0.
Yeah, that's the
lowest.
So the lowest non-integer.
It's like that's pretty. I don't know. That's to me. I think honestly, even without Christian McCaffrey, I think that that offense can be a buzzsaw and does tear through any defense.
But I'm not worried about the Jets. If we played the Chiefs, we would have lost.
That'd have been rough.
We
Yeah.
would have lost.
Yeah.
We would have lost.
It's the same thing. Questions like, you know, the Cowboys came out like gangbusters in the first half, then kind of like just took their foot off the gas. I don't know if that was the foot off the gas or did the Browns kind of figure them out, got to get some field goals, got a special teams thing. So are the Browns that bad or the Cowboys that good? To be determined.
They looked okay.
Yeah.
But I tell you, man, if they get it dialed in, they got lots of young new talent on that team.
Be interesting to see how the
Yeah.
season goes.
So if they can get it dialed in, then they'll be pretty formidable. But yeah, but if we played the Chiefs, we would have been. But you can't win with just field goals. You have to
No,
score.
if you're going to play a good team, you have to. You got to take those opportunities and maximize it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have less opportunities against good teams.
Right. You got to score.
Yeah.
So.
And Aaron Rodgers looked kind of meh, to be honest.
It was funny, man. Every time they showed the camera, like
The
whenever
eye
he
rolls.
scored.
He was in pain.
Oh yeah.
He was in
Yeah.
pain, emotionally in
This
pain.
is his first game from being injured from the first game of the last year that he got injured. So, yeah, it's funny.
So I have a question for you, though. Obviously, we watched the fun last night, but I wanted to ask you more of a general question that I think that we can kind of start here possibly. What is your political philosophy? Like, if you had a politics question, how would you begin kind of a survey of politics according to your own thoughts, beliefs, convictions?
So, is it like political philosophy as far as where I lean on certain issues, or just a
Just
general?
like, you know, how do you if we were to ask somebody, we strive carefully not to dive into anything political from the pulpit. We don't teach that way. We believe the Bible is what we should be teaching. But in this kind of forum, I do think it's a good idea to kind of get into kind of a political kind of concept, but rather than just rail or, you know, cheer. I think a better discussion for a lot of people, including myself, a lot of times, is to kind of refocus ourselves better as to how do we figure out our politics. Like, if somebody says, I don't know what to think. I don't know what to vote for, who to vote for. You know, I don't know anything about economics or anything like that. Where do you begin?
I know for me, I always start off with the preposition that transcendent truth exists, right?
Okay.
That there are certain that reality has within it certain things that align with it, right? Like, for instance, life, right? That life is important, that life is precious, right? That life is unique, right? And that we're unique amongst animals. Animals can't reason like we do. Animals can't. I mean, they build, but they can't build grandiose structures and
Or
designs
innovate.
like we do, or innovate or produce, or you know, reinvent things. Those things are unique to us, right? And so I usually start off with, you know, my presupposition is reality exists. Transcendent truths that align with reality exists. That's where I usually start in my politics.
Okay.
And then, based upon those certain truths that I am convinced that are transcendent, that are universal, then I ask the question, what person who's running for office can best what person running for office do I promotes these particular transcendent truths like I do?
Okay.
And that's how I kind of lean. So that's kind of my basic. Now we can go deeper, you know,
Sure.
of course, but
Sure.
that's usually kind of generally where I start.
And I guess, you know, we're very privileged to live in America. Obviously, you know, no other country in the world affords us opportunity or freedoms.
Sure.
Even if we feel them degrading at times, still we're still you know, far beyond any other country. Videos come out as in supposedly free worlds right now where people are being arrested for mean.
Yeah.
And it's like, and no, not a threat, just that hurt someone's feelings, and so we're going to have to arrest you. And that's pretty bad. And I think everyone, I would say most people in America would agree that that's kind of silly. So I don't want to diminish anything. However, when it comes down to the overall, if we lived in France, if we lived in Iran, Japan, Mexico, would we have a different political philosophy? Do you think, or do you think that we would, if we're biblicists, do you think that we would also have, if America didn't exist, would we maintain the same political philosophy from the Bible?
I think that we would maintain some of it. I don't know if it would be something like this akin to the United States.
Sure.
But I do think that we would keep some of it. I believe that we would promote life no matter where we live. I would be convinced that we would promote the uniqueness of man no matter where we live. I think that we would promote
justice.
Justice, righteousness, fidelity in marriage, no matter where we live. So I think that it would, all believers of many stripes lived in many countries way before America.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And again, when we read Scripture, we see these truths articulated, right? Even when Israel is in Babylon or in Assyria or whatever, we still see these truths articulated. Mm-hmm. Even within a culture that they're, or an area or a land that they're not in. So I would say that if America didn't exist, we would still promote these truths, these universal truths that I think that are espoused. That's why I start there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I start with that there are truths that are universal to all of us that ought to be recognized, right? And I think that's probably the best place, the more expedient place to start, and then find people who align with that.
So, in essence, biblically, what would you say the role of government is supposed to be?
The role of government, I would say, is a servant to the people who they're governing. That their role is to promote the general welfare of the particular people that they're governing over, and to punish evil to those who threaten it. That's basically what it's supposed to do. Yeah. To promote and to be a promoter of these truths, right? So, if there is a law, for instance, that promotes the welfare of the family structure, right? Then the governing authority ought to promote that, and to encourage it, mm-hmm. right? So I would say that that's probably where I would lean the function, the basic function of government is to promote good and to punish evil.
Okay. in that.
And to promote reality too.
Yeah. So taking all that forward and to where we are today, and I think a big question is economic policy. Is there a biblical economic policy?
Is there a biblical economic policy? I do believe that there are biblical principles. I don't believe that Paul doesn't write, and here is, by way of the word of the Lord, the economic policy for believers.
Yeah.
Say one. I don't think that I don't think that's there. But I do think that there are general principles that you can look at. For instance, in Proverbs, for example, there are general principles about saving. There are general principles about spending well, and things like that.
What about in a government aspect, and what economics should be, not personal economics?
As far as like what they're responsible for?
Yeah, like we right now there's a whole bunch of Christian movements right now that are promoting socialism over capitalism, and capitalism is a system of greed.
Yeah.
And we've had this discussion before down in Texas, and although we do believe that capitalism is better than socialism, why is that? Is it a moralistic issue? Is there an in between? Is there a different system other than socialism or capitalism?
Well, if we're talking about the Bible and a governmental system, the best governmental system is a biblical theocracy.
Yeah.
That's the best governmental system, right? Where and that won't come till later on, right?
What will be the economics there? I don't think it's discussed.
I don't think it's discussed in the scriptures. But that would be the ideal governmental system from our standpoint, would be the theocracy, biblical theocracy. I don't think capitalism, socialism, and all of that stuff is not not that I'm dismissing capitalism, but capitalism in and of itself is not biblical. You can find the theology of capitalism in Scripture. However, I believe that capitalism works because I believe that it promotes certain truths. For instance, individual merit. Individual merit.
The man does not work, he shall not eat. That type
Right,
of thing.
right. Personal efforts. Rewards that if you labor well, you get rewarded for that labor.
I think also one of the major ones is the fact that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And the fact that it yields an environment where it's not socialism or communism really forces me to be charitable. You know what I'm saying? It takes from me without my consent and gives it to individuals who I did not consent to. Whereas in a capitalistic system, I have the freedom and the ability to either keep what I have or give it to whoever I want. It's very local, as opposed to just some analogous kind of entity.
In the early forms of the United States, when I would say there's 1800s, there was a lot of lack of charitable activities amongst the population. You had a lot of homelessness with children and widows that end up on the streets very quickly. And a lot of people point to that as this is capitalism in its full form, without any guards. Is there a responsibility? Is there a governmental responsibility to look after the less fortunate?
No. I think that resides with us. That if we have the problem is when we have this argument, we're not bringing up the obvious thing, is that people are sinful, and because of that we lack charity for our neighbor. And it's kind of fascinating too, like if you read even in the law, God, it's God tells the law to the nation of Israel how they were supposed to operate individually with each other. You know what I'm saying? It's not like
not from a federal headship.
Right. It's not like God said, okay, well, I'm gonna establish the priests, and that they're gonna make sure that there's a chicken in every pot. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. or in this case, a cat in every pot.
Ooh. Or dogs.
But the again, I believe that Scripture is very clear. The role of government is to protect the people who they're governing over from evil and to promote the general welfare of a particular people. It is the people's job, I believe, to serve one another, serve the neighbor. So if I see, you, or if you see me in difficult times, one of the best things that we could do is see how I can help you, see how you can help me, see how we can help each other.
But I would be voting for a governmental system, whether you local or federally, to kind of do that for you. I believe is lazy. It takes off your responsibility. I don't have to look after my brother because there's a program for that. I give you the program, so therefore go to the program, and I don't have to deal with you directly. Now, because there's such a widespread population, obviously there are some opportunities for people to do that in various different missions and whatnot, and also within governmental systems. But I do think that there is that within socialism breeds, or socialistic concepts, not just full-blown socialism, breeds actually does the opposite of caring. It breeds a lack of caring because, I pay taxes for that. Why should I give any of my money or any of my resources to you if I have already paid my taxes? Go to the government to go get your welfare.
Right.
So it kind of breeds this animosity towards that type of situation. If that's true.
Well, let me ask you a question. Could it be that socialism, as it's popularly presented, is actually a misnomer? It's not social.
Right. So
could we say that the biblical worldview promotes a true socialism? That we have a comprehensive, thorough system of beliefs about the social design?
I believe so. And even going back into time, the most charitable organizations for the poor and disadvantaged, the widows and the orphans specifically, have always been the church in some form or another. And I use the term church loosely in this situation, where other places were, the corporations were not involved in that. They were there. Some of the corporations that were built upon were not necessarily charitable. I think times have changed, and where charity has become a PR opportunity, and so therefore, hey, we give this much, and so it's a PR stunt more than it is a business acumen. So I would say that the biblical mentality towards people and both compassion and love is true social welfare. That we see an individual who cannot pay for food, who cannot pay for clothing, and in the history of believers have been ones that have been the most charitable in that regard. So yeah, I think that is a true, because socialism, by that name and what we know of it, is basically it's putting lipstick on a pig. It's making it sound good. Socialism. We all want to be socialism type of people,
right. But
the manner by which they produce socialism and Marxism is not socialism at all. It actually is a avenue of suppression, and to have that's what became the class systems. You had the rich and the poor, and that's all you had. And so it's very interesting that I do believe that in biblically speaking, that in the Old Testament you did have some form of economics within the law, and I don't think we should be under law, but at the same time there are some principles there that we should be able to abide by, and I think that is that there is no true perfect human-based economic system. There is no true perfectly based human governmental system. We can say that the constitutional republic is the best form of government we've ever seen, but it's not the best. As you said, it's a theocracy. with Christ as King, is the ultimate form of human government. But we're not. We're going to get there, but we're not there yet. So therefore, we live under the best system we can. And the reason why I promote a form of why I promote capitalism over socialism is because I believe that people are naturally and inherently sinful, and without incentive, people will not work.
Well, I mean, you can even make an argument that capitalism has been taken advantage of by individuals who have greedy tendencies, and the origin of that is sinful too. So, you know, in one sense, you can talk about the limitations of capitalism and that it makes individuals lazy, and that, you know, that those at the top take advantage of those at the bottom ultimately, right, and things like that. But at the same time, we've seen atrocities with capitalism too, where there's been rich individuals who have taken advantage of poor individuals and having them work for little to nothing, right? And so, you know, what my problem is that we tend to dress up capitalism as this innocent virgin bride, right? And that, you know, the socialism is the drunk person outside. Well, no, it's not. What about the person who does not understand the transcendent truths? They do not understand the fact that they are sinful. They do not understand all of these things that we espouse biblically, and they end up taking advantage of the people who work for them. You know, they don't see that as a boss. They don't see themselves as a servant. They see themselves as a lord, as God unto themselves in their own places of business.
And the one thing about capitalism is that there should be competition to drive that person out of business.
Right.
There should be.
Right.
That if that gets exposed, then of course we have within our systems, you know, monopolies and whatnot. Which I think that, you know, I do think that the monopoly laws are good, because no one should have full rights over the entire industry. Which is why I'm very surprised that why are power companies allowed to be the only power company to your house? There should be competition. But anyway, the concept of the economic system of capitalism does allow for, unfortunately, corporate greed. It does. We agree that corporate greed is bad. I made the comment a long time ago to a friend of mine. I said, you know, corporate greed is bad, and we don't want corporate greed. Can you legislate greed? No, you can legislate activity. If you're abusive, if you are, if you're not paying your people, that can be legislated. You can't legislate greed. But I told him, I said, what's worse than corporate greed is government greed. Government greed is worse because they have the guns, and they can come and arrest you for laws that are just made up arbitrarily.
And there's universal influence too. So if you have corporate greed, the best thing to do is just not to go there, right? But if you have government greed, where do you go? You know, to escape that, you know, it spreads out everywhere.
Which is kind of nice being in the United States, because in essence we can, because typically there are states that are more free. So you could move in the United States, but if you're in a corporate greed situation in Europe, in England, where do you go? There's nowhere to go. And that's where that mentality is very dangerous, is when it comes down to, if all the states had the same federal mandates, then we're kind of in a bad spot. So with all that said, how would you describe your current political, we're biblicists. We live in a world which is very left and right. Would you consider yourself center right, right, far right?
I don't know what center,
left, center,
I
left.
don't know what center right means, or center. What does it mean to be a centrist?
I think a centrist would espouse views from both sides. That, like for example, a centrist would be, I'm pro-gun, but I'm also pro-abortion type of thing. So that'd be a centrist type of mentality.
I think we make up all these goofy terms. I'm center right. Well, what does that mean that you're center right? You use, center right where?
I agree with you. That's where some of the confusion comes in, because, there are various individuals who call themselves more center. I go, what do you mean more center? And one person described it economically more center as somebody who believes in capitalism, but believes that the government should have some type of firewall or some type of safety net for individuals who are hurting and need food stamps and stuff like that.
Right. I would say my preference where I land is I'm a constitutionalist, and I try to be that in every area regarding economics, politics, relations, international focus. I lean more that way. Now, whether or not you want to say center right or right, that's up to the person.
Yeah.
But I would say that I'm more constitutional. Now, I was going to add that that you're right that a human system fails for various reasons, right? However, I do believe that one of the reasons why capitalism works, particularly in our country, is because of the fact that we have a document that acknowledges that God has created us with inalienable rights. Yeah. So capitalism flourishes the greatest here because we have a document that transcends that, and there are people that recognize that, and the ones that don't stick out like a sore thumb amongst those that do. But with that being said, I believe that I align with the Constitution because, again, I believe that the Constitution, as limited as it is, it's not a perfect document, but it does outline that we do have a creator. The creator has created us. He has given to us rights that are transcendent. No one can take them. Even if there was no America, these rights are given to us.
They exist.
They exist independently of us.
Even if they are infringed.
Right. That's exactly right. And so that is why I align constitutionally, because, as I mentioned before, I start with, there are transcendent truths that align with reality. That document, although it's limited in what it states, clearly espouses that there is a God who created us and who has given us these rights that are transcendent. So, where would you land? Would you land?
I think I would say something very similar. As far as I typically I don't like to put an R or a D next to my name, but I definitely would consider myself a constitutional conservative, meaning I don't want to conserve people say, oh, you want to conserve this or that. I go, no, I want to conserve the rights. I want to conserve the Constitution because I do believe it is the greatest human government document ever created. Because because we are under law of the United States government, not under the rule of a person. And as far as I can tell, truly, the United States Constitution is the only document that's held up against other than other governments that try to put together a constitution, but still allow for some type of totalitarianism if it becomes necessary. These rights can be taken away if X, Y, or Z happens. Where we understand because of that statement that these are inalienable rights given to us by the Creator. Therefore, regardless of circumstance, these cannot be infringed. And that's one thing I don't think that people appreciate or understand, or they believe that's a flaw. We see that coming out more and more in the United States, that within certain academia or in certain media, that they believe that statement is a flaw in the Constitution. That the First, Second, Third, Fourth, Fifth Amendment are not inalienable.
I do think, though, that if I were to go back in time and go to the Constitutional Convention, I would suggest a change.
What would it?
I would suggest that they make the Second Amendment the First Amendment, and the First Amendment the Second Amendment.
Because the First Amendment hinges upon the Second Amendment.
Right.
That if you don't have the right to defend yourself or your property,
Right.
then your right to free speech
I mean,
doesn't
I think
exist.
that exists. I thank them that it's in there.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah,
but it should be
switched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The right to be able to complain about your government, the right to be able to say what you want to say, opinion or not. Now, there's people say, oh, you can't yell fire in a theater. You can, actually.
Yeah.
If there's a fire.
Yeah.
that you cannot incite violence or something like that. That's breaking the law already. But we should be able to say things that offend. I love one of the statements made recently, that if the only speech you're willing to protect is the speech that you agree with, then you don't believe in free speech. That you have to be able to defend a person's right to say. Like, for example, I was handed a document recently in which there was an attempt to make the statement, and this is a difficult one, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Considered to be hate speech and therefore punishable. And I said, I disagree. And they're like, but that's called to violence. I go, most people who say it don't know what to call violence. They're not out there, kill all.
Right.
They're not saying that. They're saying, oh, I want all of Palestine to be free.
Right.
And they don't know what that really means according to the Palestinian or according to the Muslim who hates the Jew. So my statement was, I want people to be able to say this unhinged, unencumbered, so that I know who they are. I want people to say, I don't think that Christianity should exist. I don't think that black or white should exist.
Matter of fact, there are people that say that,
yes.
and it's unhinged.
Yes, it's completely unhinged. I want people to espouse their racism. I want people to let me know who they are, unencumbered, even though I hate their speech, even though I don't want them to say it, even though I think they're wrong beyond all measure, even though I think it actually causes other individuals potentially to be to take action. If they're not directly saying go kill that person or go kill this group, I think they should be allowed to speak as much as they want. So there was a group of Christians who brought that to my attention. I'm like, they were kind of shocked that I mentioned. I don't think that should be illegal to say. Why? Because I believe that more speech is better than less speech. That statements or phrases should not be infringed.
And who gets to control that?
Yeah.
So when someone else is in power and they don't like your speech,
right,
that becomes hate speech.
Like if all of a sudden I say, I don't think Muslims are saved.
Mm-hmm.
Biblically speaking, they are not in God's family. Now I have committed some type of injustice towards them. And therefore, they can claim that I am inciting violence against them.
Right. I think one of the cool things about the Constitution...
Did I just break us? YouTube?
Yeah, we might have to put this on Rumble. That's okay. That's all right. We're already down.
I didn't say I said it. I said if I said it.
Right. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
We're talking about. We're talking about a topic that is sensitive to everybody.
Sure.
One of the things I like about the Constitution, one of the many things actually, is the fact that it promotes self-governance. So, if my rights from God are inalienable, well, then that makes me responsible to govern myself well, right? If God has given me the ability to speak freely because I'm a human being who is created in the image of God and have been given the faculties of reason, then that means that I need to use my reason well. And using my reason well doesn't necessarily mean cursing or anything else like that. But how do you use it well? To promote truth, to promote justice, to promote righteousness, to speak out against things that are against that. I believe that's one of the reasons why the Constitution was written, right? Was to espouse and highlight that, right? That it is the people that have the power to vote for their representatives, right? That is unique in history.
Yes, it is.
I mean, unique in history.
Mm-hmm.
That if we don't like how, and by the way, the standard is the Constitution, not how much I get from my government assistance,
Right.
not how much, bread I get from the government dole. The standard is the Constitution. If we as a people use that standard to vet those who represent us, I mean, could you imagine the change that would come in the country? That we would actually govern. By the way, that's why some of the founding fathers, they said that's why you need an informed citizenry.
Mm-hmm.
Citizenry who aren't informed are enslaved.
And not only that, but a population, excuse me, that is not self-governing or hold a belief in God as far as there's a higher standard, not to the government,
Right.
but that you're held to a standard to God,
Right.
over your behavior and your activity. If you don't believe that,
Right.
then a constitutional republic is impossible.
It gets impossible. Yeah. But was it, I think it's Thomas Jefferson, no, Benjamin Franklin, I think.
That's one of the guys.
Yeah, one of them. They said a republic, which is what we are. We're not a democracy. A republic is only for a religious and moral people.
Yeah. Because we have to be self-governed.
Yeah.
We have to take responsibility for our own actions.
Yeah. And in order for you to understand self-governance, you need to understand that there's a creator over you that you have to give an account to at some point, right, for what you've done. So, and with that, if in a perfect world, if everyone followed that, sure, capitalism would even be more amazing, right? Because then people, who have workers who don't take advantage of their employers will actually work for the benefit of their employer. Why? Because they're governing themselves and how they respond, right? But at the same time, bosses and those who are in those positions would work for the benefit of their employees. Why? Because they know that they have to answer to someone higher than them, right?
It's always interesting to deal with business, and I know that we both worked in both private industries at various different levels. And that's one thing that I don't understand about the current atmosphere of most businesses. When you walk into a place, in a general location, either a store or a restaurant or various things, the amount of animosity that automatically is hit from the people who are there to serve you is amazing to me. It's like they've forgotten there's no mission anymore within service. There's no mission. You're there as a cashier. You're like, oh. Like, dude, the reason you're here and have a job is because people come in and buy stuff. It's like, I don't understand this. But they treat you with like, I understand the job's monotonous. I understand that this is not your life plan. You didn't wake up, in 13 years old. You know what I want to be? Whatever. No one said they wanted. Well, actually, my daughter did at one point. She wanted to be a cash. She wanted to be a cash register. But
just a cash register, not a person who works.
Well, she was. I think she was 6. So
okay. Well, that's fine.
But I go, you mean a cashier? She goes, yeah, that. I was like, why? Why do you want to be that? But nobody says that as their life goal. However, if you want to be able to make money in the service industry, then you have to realize that the person coming in the door is your meal ticket. They're spending money so that you can have money, so that you can have a job, so that you can go spend money somewhere else. And I don't understand that about people. And it's like there's definitely a lack of understanding of service in any industry. That they're not there to serve, they're there to get from you. You walk into a door, and it's not like, how can I help you? In what way can I serve you? Win your business. There's none of that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, is there any special? You know what? You can see yourself out. I'm like, I just ask if there's a special. It's like it's unfathomable to me, the lack of understanding from the even ownership, even people who own the business, really don't own the business to serve the population. They own the business to try to get rich or try to make money, but they don't understand the correlation between service and getting people to come in the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't serve people anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah. Serve in a sense of a disposition.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? An attitude.
How you live your life.
I think that this might be another topic for another time, but I find that the philosophical perspective of existentialism, I think, has just corroded us. The very fact that you have to find your chief purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find it, right? And usually, when it's left up to us, or building a legacy, leaving your mark in history, or things like that. I mean, there are trillions of people that have lived throughout history. We don't know their names. We don't know their life. You know what I'm saying?
And in 2 generations, nobody will.
Yeah. No one. No one will know. We think that we're so greater than who we are.
Do you know your great-grandparents' names?
No.
Isn't that sad? Is it sad or is it reality?
Yes.
Ecclesiastes talks about this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That
that the world goes on as it has been, and it goes on, and you no one will remember you.
Yeah. And will until Christ returns. Like I remember my grandfather, Jim, my grandma Maddie. I knew of I didn't meet my original grandmother on my dad's side. On my mother's side, I knew my grandparents, but I don't know who their parents were at all. I mean, I don't remember a picture of them on either side, which is, we weren't big on history and legacies and whatnot. At the same time, I do find that odd that just a few generations, which tells me that I have influence over my kids and my kids. I have grandchildren, and their children may know me at one point, but their children will not know me at all. Even if I have a legacy, so to speak, even if I have my picture on a wall somewhere, I will be nothing to them.
Yeah, they don't know you.
The hope is that we leave a biblical legacy with them. That I taught my children, and my children will teach their children, and their children will teach about who God is and about who Christ is. If there's a hope for a legacy, that's what I hope to believe.
Yeah, and I think that this ties into back the service thing that you were talking about is yes, being a cash register or cashier is not the most glamorous job, right? It is the most overlooked job. But if you have the perspective that, if you have the perspective of, I was born for something greater than this, that's not going to satisfy you. You're going to be miserable, right? And you're going to miss the fact that you're serving all of these people, right, with what you're doing, right? However, if you resort to simple thinking, simple living, not simple-mindedness, but simple living, that what I'm doing is important for what I'm doing now. Me serving my neighbor right now, doing, I'm just taking money at a cashier, but like you said, these people are providing a job for me, right? The very fact that I even have a job, right? I think people would be more satisfied with their life. I'm telling you right now, we talked about this before. I despise secular existential thought. I despise it because it sells people a bill of goods. It sells them, oh well, you could be amazing. You could leave your mark in the annals of time. It feeds on one's ego.
Yes.
And it leaves people miserable and
unaccomplished.
And what's so fascinating about this Will, is that us as believers, the very people who we believe in existential thought, of course, we believe that our purpose is given to us. We don't find anything. It is given to us, right? I find that even the way we talk in pulpits, at fellowships, is existential, secular existential nonsense, and we don't even know it.
Right. When we try to talk to the masses about finding God's roadmap for your life, that is secular existentialism. It rather than looking at the Bible and saying, here are the prescribed purposes for your life, because He's not going to say, Will, here's your purpose.
Right.
He's going to say, Christian believer, here's your purpose.
Right. We all have the same purpose.
Yes. And yet we try to say there's an individual avenue for you designed by God, and that's not biblical.
Yeah. You're going to turn the world upside down. No, you're not.
Right.
No, you're not.
And even if you do, in 2 generations it will be forgotten.
Yeah,
even if you have a painting on the wall, even if you have a statue made in your likeness, it'll be torn down. It'll go to dust. No one's going to care.
Right.
Or they're going to come to curse you.
Right. 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 So who do you want to be remembered by? I want God to remember me. That,
Yes. If there's one accolade you want, it's for Him to say, well done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And because, all the accolades of the world mean zero.
Right. Right.
What does Paul say in Philippians? Philippians chapter...
It says a lot of things.
I know. It says, I count all these things, all the accolades of humanity. I mean, he was a Pharisee of Pharisees. He was a Hebrew of Hebrews. He was tribe of Benjamin. This guy had everything, and everything as what? Is what?
Escubalon.
Escubalon.
Yeah.
It's not a good word.
Yeah.
Escubalon.
Yeah. Rubbish.
As compared to the righteousness of Jesus Christ. And that's a gift. So therefore, there's nothing to brag about.
Yeah.
There's nothing to glory over. There's nothing for us to be able to say, I've done this. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Being the pastor of Beth Haven Church was probably, for me, the shining star in my life. I've had many careers. But even being the pastor of Beth Haven Church, being able to teach at this church, which has a good legacy, is Scubalon compared to Christ. It's really nothing. If the Lord tarries for another 100 years, even if this church still exists, I will be a distant memory, and that's okay, because what I want to be able to do is honor Christ with my service towards other people.
Yeah, and it's that type of attitude that you can be a cashier, and it would be the best job you ever had.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You don't have to have a high monetary career. Who are you? Are you representing Christ well to your family? Are you representing Christ well to your neighbors? Are you representing Christ well to those you love? Do you live a life that is honoring to Him? Right. Do you grow in grace and knowledge?
Right.
If you do that, and I think, not to plug anything, but you wrote about this, did you not?
That was one of the motivations of why I wrote the Good Works book, was because I was tired, not just spiritually but physically. And I said, if Christianity is about me trying to find my destiny and my purpose, I don't want anything to do with this. Right. It's garbage. It's garbage. Because I don't know if what I'm doing God is even pleased with, or God even wants. Like I have no standard, no basic of reference.
Completely subjective.
Yeah.
And the only thing we have to go on is whether or not we're seem successful in the eyes of men.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Yeah.
So we should be able to look at the Bible and say, am I doing what's right in God's eyes? Mm-hmm. And hold ourselves to that standard.
Yeah.
And therefore be okay.
Yeah. I was exhausted. And I found out that not only was it easy, but God didn't want me to be exhausted. He didn't want me. Are you done running? Yeah. Are you done being exhausted?
Can you rest?
Yes. Yeah. And so, I find that any job I have, I can find contentment in, not because of the job itself, but because of the fact that I understand my position.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I shocked somebody one time because they said, "Oh, you've made it. You're a pastor at Beth Haven Church." I'm like, "Yeah, but if it's taken away tomorrow, I'm okay." I am not called to be a pastor. I am in a very privileged position.
See, now you're opening something up.
I know.
But you're opening up another door. I don't know how much time we have. I mean, we've been on this over an hour. We might have to swing around and talk about
maybe a
calling, and because that's a lot. That has a lot to do with existential thoughts.
It does, and that's God's roadmap for you. You're called for that purpose. You're like, are we? Is this a biblical thought, or is this a secular, humanist, existential thought that we have inserted into Christianity?
Yeah.
And that's a tough question for a lot of people, because now what happens is, and I've talked to people about this before, now immediately they feel purposeless. I go, no, you're not purposeless.
Right.
You've just misinterpreted the purpose.
Right.
You've gone into, I've had various different subjective signs in my life that tell me my purpose. No, you have an objective purpose written in Scripture that tells you your purpose.
Yeah.
And that's easier.
Yeah.
The Christian life should be easy, regardless of your profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's excellent. Man, we covered a whole bunch of ground today, man.
We talked
sports,
about government,
politics, sports, politics,
economics.
Yeah.
I do want to get back to one point, though, eventually, and I would like to do it soon. And I do want to talk about, we may want to edit this part out, whether or not we want to state who we're voting for and why.
Well, if we do that, then that will probably be a Rumble thing.
Oh, well, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do have our Rumble page up. Beth Haven Church, a Rumble page in case you're looking for it.
We'll probably that'll be a Rumble exclusive. We'll just put that over there. If you want to, get discussions in black and white, you're just gonna have to go to Rumble for this one.
It might be.
Yeah.
It might be, but it's there. So it's in the Beth Haven Church Rumble page, and of course on Urban Theologian Media on YouTube.
Yeah. So we're not big enough or influential enough to take the hit on that. It gets deleted.
It wouldn't be like, hey, you may want to just edit that out. No, there's
you get a strike. Yeah. So we'll do that. That'll be fun. As a matter of fact, we could talk about that. Why who are we voting for and why?
And I think it needs to go deeper than the presidential. I think it needs to go deeper than that. I think we need to talk about if we have thoughts on local politics at all.
Yeah, that could be good too.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
All right.
Very good. Well, we'll see you not next week. You'll be gone next week.
I'll be gone next week. So in 2 weeks.
All right. So in 2 weeks. And grace and peace to you guys, and we'll see you later.